Yo, what is up guys, Ghost here, and today I thought I'd show you guys a few things you probably don't know about in Battlefield 2042 Season 5, a few tips and options to improve your gameplay, especially if you don't regularly read through the entire update changes, which I don't blame you for at all because they can get pretty long. Before we begin though, if you do enjoy the content here on the channel, consider subscribing so you don't miss out on any future Battlefield content. Our current goal is 50,000 subscribers, so any help with that would be massively appreciated. Thank you guys so much. Okay, so let's begin here with the new tank decoupling option. So if you go into mouse and keyboard or controller options depending on what you use, then to vehicles and you scroll all the way down to the bottom, you'll see an option called Decouple Tank Turret Aiming from Turning. But what does this do, you ask? Well, to put it simply, it attempts to keep your turret aimed in the same location regardless of how you turn your tank. So here you can see that with the option off, if I'm swiveling my tank around, my turret is automatically turning in the same direction I'm turning, and I'm having to constantly compensate for that movement in the opposite direction, which is really bad if you're trying to aim at a target whilst repositioning, and that's the way it's always worked in 2042. However, with the new option turned on, you can see I can now turn my tank and keep my turret looking in the same direction, so this will give you a much greater sense of control over your tank's aiming and maneuverability. And whilst we're here in the options, let's go over a few more that are brand new in Season 5. As some of you may have noticed, DICE have increased the feeling of soldier sprint movement in Season 5 by incorporating some changes to the camera. However, if you don't like these changes, there is now actually an option under accessibility called Reduce Sprint Camera Motion. Now this is set to off by default, but by toggling this to on, things will then feel the same way they did pre-Season 5. Personally, I play at an FOV of 90, and so I don't really feel much difference either way, but if you play at a lower FOV, then it may well have a greater effect on you. Furthermore, we also have some new options for the damage numbers. So the system itself isn't new here, but the options around it are, and at least for me, it defaulted to showing me the damage numbers next to my crosshair. But if that's not where you want the damage numbers to appear and you find them a little bit invasive, then you can move them to the kill feed or hide them entirely. And then you've got separate options for the size of the number and both a horizontal and vertical offset for the positioning, so you can set things up just the way you like it. Next, we have some more options for the chat screen. I'm not sure if these chat options actually were in the update notes for Season 5, I don't recall them being there, but regardless, you can now change the size and scale of the chat box as well as the background opacity, so that's pretty cool. Moving on here, we have some changes to the jets, and if you've been focused on playing infantry on the new map Reclaimed like most people have, you might not even realise that these are in the game, but you can now unlock rocket pods for the F-35 and the Su-57. To do so, you'll need 20 kills and assists on infantry or ground vehicles with the F-35 or the Su-57, although I have seen people do this with air-to-air kills as well, and one easy way is to simply play some air superiority in Portal. Now, in addition to that, you might now realise that the jet camera has seen a few tweaks as well. The camera should now react much more closely to your inputs, and it should tail your jet more rigidly, almost like a GoPro that's stuck on there, and sort of closely mimic how things were in Battlefield 4. But the big change for me is that you can now finally control the jet whilst looking in the rear view camera. So if you're in the middle of a dogfight and you want to know how close the other pilot is to your tail, you can now do that without dying, or at least giving the other guy a free shot. And whilst we are on the subject of the jets, this one isn't new in Season 5, but somewhere along the line, DICE added the option to turn off the jet roll camera, which means that now when you roll a jet from side to side, the camera will not roll with it. You can find this in the vehicle section of either your keyboard and mouse or controller settings, although unfortunately it seems like the rear view camera will always roll regardless of the setting, so here's hoping that DICE can change that to match up accordingly to your options as well. Next, we have some changes to the Recon class. So the Recons are the only class in the game that can carry the proximity sensor, but just recently in Season 5, DICE actually improved them a little bit by allowing you to carry 2 instead of 1, and obviously you can now have 2 deployed at once as well. In addition to that, they also changed it so Recons can now use the concussion grenade alongside the support and assault players. Okay, this next one isn't new to Season 5, but I actually learned about this not too long ago, so I'm willing to bet there are still many of you who don't know about this either. And that is that tanks actually take more or less damage depending on where you hit them. I went into this in much more detail whilst also comparing the M5 recoilless launcher to the new RPG to see which is better in terms of damage, so if you guys want to see that entire video, I will link it in the corner. But to summarise, if you hit a tank in the side with the M5 recoilless, you will do 27 damage, if you hit them in the rear, it'll do 34 damage, and if you hit it in the front, it'll only do 21 damage. Another interesting fact is that if you hit it in the turret area, that will also do 27 damage, just like in the side. So if you don't have a side angle of a tank and it's, off in the distance, you're going for a long range shot with the M5, you're always better aiming for the turret than the frontal armor below it. Moving on, you may have heard that in Season 5, Dozer saw some pretty big improvements. He's able to move faster with his shield out now, and he draws his shield faster too. But did you know that you can now shield yourself whilst on a zipline? So if you're going up to storm a rooftop, let's say, previously this would have been suicide, but now you can just zip on up and bash somebody straight in the face. This also works going down zip lines and across zip lines like on exposure, for example. Now, DICE also made a pretty impactful change to gunplay in Season 5, and I'm not talking about the new dispersion on the assault rifles, I'm talking about ADS FOV, or Aim Down Sights Field of View. This option has been in the game since launch, but DICE have just now changed it to default as on instead of off. Now, if you're not familiar, this option attempts to tie your field of view whilst aiming down sights to your base field of view that you've set for yourself in the options, right? So if I play at 90 field of view, whenever I ADS, the game will try its best to keep my field of view as close to 90 as possible. This is overall better for your muscle memory and your aim, but if you do prefer playing without this option on and you like that zoom in effect whenever you ADS, you can simply go into display and turn ADS field of view to off. And finally here, just in case you really have been living under a rock, don't forget that the squad management system is in the game. I don't really see many people using it, and if you find yourself in a terrible squad, let's say, you can always jump to another one, or perhaps better still, create your own by going to the squads and players screen. So I hope you found something in this video useful, guys. Leave a like if you enjoyed it, subscribe for more Battlefield, and a special thanks to my members for their additional support. Cheers for spending some time with me as always, and I'll see you guys in the next one.